Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the ENT Youth Services Podcast. ENT Youth Services strives to empower, nurture, and transform opportunity youth to become individuals with essential life skills that are necessary to make a valuable contribution to their communities and the world. Stay connected with ENT via your favorite social media apps and help us get the word out, giving us a 5-star rating on YouTube and also, just sharing our podcast. Now let's start today's episode. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the ENT Youth Services Podcast. Again, after a very brief hiatus, it's me, Dr. Kyler Wiltz here, serving as the as the co-host. Sophia, moving forward will probably be our co-host, and from what I've heard and also from what I've listened to, she did such an amazing job in my absence. So big kudos, big ups to her, and then really, really looking forward to seeing the progress that we make now as a duo for this podcast. And then with that being said, next I would also like to give a special shout out to all of the parents, to Dr. Gage and everyone that continue on with our amazing series. So with that being said, Ms. Jennifer, would you like to do the introductions?
Yes, Kyler, thank you. This is Jennifer Heaven. I'm the lead parent for the Parent Podcast. And today I want to introduce again our guest speaker, Dr. Gage. She's a child and adolescent psychiatrist that specializes in addiction medicine, and she has 20 years of experience and practices in the DMV. So we want to welcome Dr. Gage again to our Parent Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome, awesome. And yes, again, thank you so much for joining us again, Dr. Gage. And with me not being here for the last episode, but just kind of listening, just kind of putting things together. This series specifically was about examining the mental health, social economic, the psychological stressors that our parents face, within modern times with everything expanding from their day-to-day responsibilities to raising their kids to school to making meals all the way up to the different policies that we're seeing and that we are currently experiencing in 2025 America. So with that being said, would you like to, kind of kick us off, Dr. Gage? Just kind of piggybacking off of the last episode with just again, a kickoff, kind of like starting a football game. It's something that we can kind of roll on with because I do have some questions that I kind of wrote down, before I wasn't able to make the last episode that I would like to dive in a little bit.
Sure. Well, I think, the last episode was really powerful. We were able to discuss some of the challenges of, single mothers, from the financial aspect, the mental health aspect, the relationships with their children, and how, having that dynamic can also impact adolescents and their mental health. And so I was really excited when we even got some personal kind of perspectives on some of these things because obviously on one side of it I can always share what I hear in my office and with patients that I meet, but there's nothing like someone, really sharing their own personal journey and how, being a single mom has really impacted them, their children, and the ways they've been able to kind of go through challenging situations and face adversities, navigating parenthood alone. So I think we just kind of left with some things that would be really helpful for single parents to focus on. And I hope I emphasize the importance of taking care of your own mental health and physical health. That way you can be 100% whole and in a good place to care for your children. And that concept of not being able to give from an empty well. So I think that was kind of where we left off.
Perfect, perfect. So to your point about not giving from an empty well, and it seems like the sentiment of that comes from a large part of self-awareness, right? Like really understanding when I really don't have anything to give, and if I do give any more, I will implode. But within that, there's an antithesis, right, of what it means to be a parent, and more specifically, a parent in a sense of it's really just me here. So,
Mhm.
my question in that regard is, within your practice, even within your own day to day, what are some of the things that you recommend? What are some of the things, mechanisms that you've seen work in regards to that extremely important self-preservation? And on top of that, I would also like some of the other parents to chime in as well, not only for the sake of this conversation, but for myself when it does come time for me to have my family, and really kind of understanding the importance of not only having those boundaries, but really understanding the importance of being able to take care of yourself. Because if you have nothing left to give, how can you be an effective a parent, or even an effective member of a coalition or a community builder?
Right. Well, I think some of the things I touched on last week were, time for your physical health, making sure that you are the same way you take your kids for your physicals, like don't delay on yours. Make sure you're getting your physicals, all the tests for our women, our breast cancer screenings, our, colonoscopies, all the things that, we're seeing more and more that younger and younger parents and people are being diagnosed with and having treatment for. And a lot of it, you'll hear is that I just didn't have the time. I never went, or I skipped a year. And then there's that thought that, wow, like if I'd been keeping up with this, would I have found or caught on to something earlier and been able to prevent something or treat something before it progressed? So, taking care of your physical health, doing the things that keep you healthy, right? So, the things that you feed yourself and what you feed your children, that's important. And it's hard because in this day and age, we're constantly on the go. There's not really a lot of time for prepping food and making healthy foods, but it is so important for our physical health, right? Like, how do we serve our children if we're constantly sick because we don't have the proper nutrients or, minerals and vitamins in our body that keep us healthy? A
Hmm.
big one for me is sleep, proper sleep.
Mm.
Many parents, and I'll admit myself at times, will have that me time once your children go to bed. And it's very tempting to take that time at night when you are by yourself to do the things that you want to do. So that's when I watch the shows I want to watch because I can't watch them around my kids, or, that's when I want to scroll on my phone. And all those things are tempting because during the day you're constantly on go, you're doing for your job, you're doing for your family. But sacrificing sleep is one of the most detrimental things I think anyone can do. Your brain, your body requires that rest, that time of turnover, rejuvenation. And many of us are just like, oh, I function on 4 hours sleep or 5 hours sleep. You might, and of course we know this going through med school, but that was
Yeah.
never a healthy thing. That, and it still is not a healthy thing. It is not, it is not something that we should sacrifice. um the other, I'll, kind of put out because I got to do this last night, was just some time away from your children. And this may be a bit controversial, but children can be challenging. It's not always, unicorns and popcorn and cotton candy. So having some time away to just recoup, take some breaths without constantly being called and becking, mommy, do this for me, mommy, I need this, or pushing yourself from this practice to this birthday party. Like, having time to yourself is huge. Last night one of my friends took my kids and they had a night over at auntie's house, and that was so huge for me to just come home and have a night to myself, be able to just sit, do things I wanted to do, and just recoup. And I was thrilled and happy to go get them today, just because I had some time to myself. So being able to, have that village, the people around you who can give you a small break every so often, just to get some time, just to do something for yourself.
And the is this actually kind of reminds me, of a story when I was younger. And again, I mention this often, but it never fully registers how overwhelming it is to have five plus children in the house, all screaming, mama, mama, 24/7. And I remember sometimes, and we all look back on it and laugh, where it would just kind of get to the point where all of us kind of needed something and just kept screaming, "Mama, mama!" And my mom would just be like, she's not here right now. She's on break. She's on lunch break." Again, it's funny in hindsight, but as you mentioned, it could be extremely overwhelming within that, trying to maintain. And again, like we have kind of like we're speaking on in a sense of just a parent in general. You know, one thing that you mentioned about it being controversial, and that's the beauty of a space such as this one, because we all kind of have certain thoughts or certain feelings about certain situations, and I don't particularly feel that it is harmful to have a space to vent, to speak about having these, I'm tired. Like I am really, really burnt out. And to kind of even draw that parallel, as you mentioned in medical school, to us, they literally, you could sleep when you're gone, or you could sleep when you become a doctor, but that creates not only a toxic learning space for us, but you just look at the statistics and the quality of life for a lot of physicians. The different, suicide rates or rates of major depressive disorders are continuing to go up. And the answer is you're continually burning people out with this mindset that the only thing that is important is achievement, or in the case of a single parenthood, is being able to maintain your household. But we are all human within that regard. I would really like for some of the other moms to be able to chime in as well.
Hey, Kyler, this is Heaven. Can you hear me?
But yes, ma'am.
So it's funny how, I think we as parents were initiated into that lack of sleep and working off of lack of sleep. As soon as you have children, it just becomes second nature because they're either feeding it every 2 hours or crying or not wanting to go to sleep. So it's something that we've already initiated ourselves into a theme of working off of the least amount of sleep that we can. And we just carry that over into, as the children grow and adulthood. Um, Post children, we just learn to adapt to it. But then I think about those times where when my brother and I were at home and we're calling my mom at work, fussing, "Oh, okay, he won't give me the remote, or he hit me, or she did this," and now that I'm a parent, I feel like, okay, this is what we dished out to our mother, and now I can feel it because there are times where I'm just like, look, I just want to close my door and I don't want to be bothered. And it took some time for me to feel like, okay, I can unapologetically separate myself from my children and not feel guilty about it. To the point where it's just like, I ask people on Mother's Day, are you supposed to spend time with your children, or are your children supposed to be away from you? Because I think for a mother on Mother's Day, I don't necessarily want my children with me because I have them 24/7. So that
Hmm.
is my time to focus on myself and be able to, pour back into myself because I don't have to be a mother that day because I'm a mother 24/7. So I don't need my children around me for Mother's Day. And I'm okay with that, and I feel like, we as parents, we do have to make that time for ourselves and be unapologetic about it. If that means you need to go to a hotel just to stay overnight so you can just sleep and watch TV, like, Dr. Gay says, I can watch all my shows. I think we have the right to do that and not feel guilty about
Absolutely. To that point again, I guess my next question is, what does that boundary, or and I feel boundary might be a bad word, but being able to navigate the delineation between being a parent and also still preserving self. I definitely feel like I could be wording this a little bit different. And the reason that I'm asking that is because I had this conversation with my own mom, because my mom had me when she was 19, and my younger sister like literally just graduated high school like 2 years ago. So my mom's entire adult life has honestly been being a mom. And within our conversations, it came up on, when you've been a mom for so long, especially during, your entire 20s, where most of us, I know for myself, my 20s was like, okay, I could just hit my head, explore, learn, etc., etc. And when you have children, that process becomes so much harder because now any mistakes or any bumps you make not only impacts you, but it also impacts your children. So as you kind of move up, aging and then kind of get to the point where your kids are now older, what does that process look like on trying to, okay, we are moving into, a new phase of life, where I'm still a parent and I'm still actively involved, but it's like now there's this space of time where I can now focus on my mental health a little bit more. I can now focus on finding new hobbies. What has that looked like for you guys? And even if your kids are still young, even now, because I would probably, and you guys may agree, may not, but taking care of a newborn baby is much different than taking care of, like an 11, 12, 13 year old because their maturity, their independence, so on and so forth. So what does that process look like, as your children have gone from newborns to toddlers to now, some are even in high school.
Well, I'll say for me, I have a range of kids. So my youngest is 6, my oldest is 17, and two in between who are 8 and 14. When they were all, I guess, under 10, um, I didn't really have time away from them other than maybe like a date night with my husband or something like that
Hmm.
because we just thought they were too young. And there were 4 of them to leave with anybody for overnight. It felt like a big ask of anyone to take care of 4 children, 2 who were really small babies at that time. So our rule was like when we had our bigs and our smalls, which are 2 older, were old enough to feed themselves, brush their own teeth, things like that, then we would start branching out for like an overnight or a weekend trip or something like that. Because the goal is, again, I really take into account that the person who's caring for your kids is also lifting a heavy weight, caring for children who are not theirs.
Hmm.
And in our case, again, caring for 4 children because we never broke them up.
Hmm.
So it was more about the independence of the kids, how much they could do on their own. And once they were old enough, like now, 6 and 8 year old, they can brush their own teeth and still need some support and guidance sometimes, but overall do things on their own that no one has to feed them, or change diapers or anything like that. We were a lot more comfortable going away for longer periods of time. So for me, it was the development, developmental stages of my kids, what they were able to do independently. And that gave me a little bit more like flexibility mentally to know that they would be okay if mom wasn't there.
Hmm.
Hi, my name is Diallo Watts, and I am a part of the ENT Youth Partners. I just wanted to insert a short interruption to tell you about our sponsor. Today, our sponsor is you, the listener. Thank you so much for donating to ENT Youth Services on our website. Every dollar goes towards plans to continue our impactful workshops, expand our reach on social media, continue our successful podcast, and so much more. If you would like to sponsor ENT, please email us at contact@entyouth.com. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Was that Dr. Perez?
Yes, I wanted to just add a new perspective for me, and that's being a grandmother.
Yes.
And we're grandmothers and older people, nurturers, um, fit in our new perspective of family. And I know at the beginning we talked about single parents, and sometimes because my experience with a lot of single parents were that they were teenagers, and the teenagers that were the most successful were those that incorporated their grandparents, their great aunt, and everybody, because it's a perspective. And we have lots of policies that tend to separate our multi generational families from each other. so that in order to
Very,
get
very true.
certain resources, we isolate you from your family. And when I did my adolescent fellowship, I coined, really focused in on that. And in the Mississippi Delta versus what was happening in New York City, the teenage parents in the Mississippi Delta with less resources, their children were born with a greater birth weight, which is a significant indication of good health, than the ones that had more resources in the city. And the reason for that was because grandma, great grandma, Aunt Bessie, and everybody was involved. And sometimes our perspective, and I'm now they calling me mother at church, but which which is not something I'm happy about. But anyway, when we incorporate, I mean, I I feel bad when I buy you perfume for a present and you don't like the scent. I'd rather say I got the kids for 2 hours and give you a coupon and you can cash it in anytime you want to. Or two or
Would rather
three of
that too.
my, excuse me?
I said we would rather that too.
Yes, and I think some of it we need to make that culturally a thing. I know I asked little JC, I said, what Nana wants more than anything was for you to get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. What I want for a young mother, I want you to I want you to have a bubble bath. Have a bubble bath by yourself. Take yourself out to dinner. Get dressed up just for you. And to be able to do that, I'll babysit. I will babysit. And I think when we change the paradigm, we begin to offer that. Then we learn to adjust to the situation that we are in right now. Because everything is to separate us. Everything is to make yourself think that you're independent. And that's not true. Chose to be Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So just a little different perspective. I'm going to reach out more than I do. There's no reason my girlfriend and I can't take care of 5 kids for a night.
Mhm. Which is actually, I never put it into that type of context until you mentioned it, Dr. Perez, because like on my mom's side, I'm the oldest grandchild, and then on my like her dad's side, I'm the oldest great grandchild. So literally, up until I was, I think my great grandmother passed away when I was like 9, and then my great grandfather passed away when I was 10. But literally, it was for my entire upbringing. It was my great grandparents' house, and then my grandparents lived like literally across the yard, and then moved across the street. And now my mom literally lives around the corner. And I think sometimes since moving here, you kind of take those things for granted, but as you mentioned, the individualization of the family unit has definitely taken such a huge toll on us, especially considering that that has always been our superpower, our ability to depend on one another and come together and make positive impactful change, but more importantly to spread love amongst ourselves, across our communities, and especially for those that, even if they look different than us, the grace that we extend to others has always really been something, beautiful and godly within, our black and brown communities. And, as you mentioned, from a policy sense, when you kind of break down and go into the different elements and negative impacts of what policy has done to our black and brown communities, and then you now see the manifestation of these policies in everyday life, and ultimately how they impact our children. I honestly had not heard of the study that you mentioned just now, but I will also say that I 1000% believe it. that extra support. I honestly, our mom even says it now as well, that, if my grandparents weren't as close or weren't as accessible, didn't know how we would have been able to kind of get this far. And, kind of with that, you mentioned a lot of different ways that we can kind of get back to the basics, get back to what built the foundation of our communities, to what got us through immense hard times where unfortunately we see ourselves back in. So with that, as Dr. Perez also mentioned some strategies, I would like others to also kind of give input on not what they see lacking within this regard of building families and communities within our own units, but even with other single parents, and even sometimes two-parent households where one parent tends to carry the burden a little bit more when it comes to the children. So, what are some of the strategies that we can begin to employ for ourselves to pull more people in, but then even outside of pulling people in, that we could individually do to build up our foundations within our families, within our communities, within our households?
Definitely listen to the ENT podcast.
Thank you so much for that shout out. Which again is it's while in kind of like a lighthearted sense, it does, it provides some laughter with the comment, but it's extremely true. I think we all would probably agree that the more the merrier within this context, right? I think we've done an amazing job with creating a space where we bring in parents, but then we also bring in people who are not only parents but are professionals who bring a special expertise, a je ne sais quoi, to these conversations that allows us to not only dive into their professional minds, but how are you, handling and dealing with these different things, right? Dr. Gage not only being able to speak to, her medical background, but also coming in and like, yeah, I have kids myself and I'm also tired. It brings in a space of relatability and vulnerability that allows other parents to come out and speak about the struggles that they've been going through. I know that there was another question. I'm actually looking at my notebook right now, that I would like to ask Dr. Gage, as far as what has she noticed as far as the different trends and approaches towards maintaining mental health. Because a lot of times we speak about the things that we aren't doing, but what are some of the things that you've been noticing within this newer generation of parents that they're doing to prioritize their mental health for the betterment of their children?
Well, I think that depends on the population that I'm dealing with, right? So, um, certainly have those who have the means and financial stability and may pursue their own coaching, therapy, meditation classes, yoga classes, things like that. Um, the other end of it, we have many people who don't really seek any services. Their way of coping is, sometimes unhealthy means, whether it's drinking or smoking or, some other unhealthy kind of quick gratification. And again, it's really difficult in population of blacks to push the importance of mental health while still maintaining this chronic um, this chronic idea that the black woman is so strong or the black man is so strong, they can deal with anything. And I can tell you, I treat a lot of patients who really, they are repulsed by the idea of talking to a therapist, being treated by a psychiatrist, because of kind of generational stereotypes about mental health treatment. I try my best to provide education about this, but for some, it is really hard to get them to understand the importance. And sometimes I have to reword it, right? I said it's not mental health, then let's call it brain health. And if we think about your brain as an organ, just like your heart and your lungs and every other part of your body that you would get assessed and evaluated to make sure it's working well, maybe that'll help you process this a little bit easier. Um, so, the biggest challenge is getting people to understand they don't have to just take burdens on their own, that if they are struggling or dealing with depression or anxiety, which are so very underdiagnosed, especially in Black populations, because they will not seek treatment, they will not talk about it. And even if they do, sometimes they will refuse treatment, is to me like number one on the list. Talking to your doctor if you are struggling, expressing why you're struggling, how you're struggling, and recognizing that brain health is just as important as your pulmonary health and your GI health and your reproductive health and every other part of your body.
And with that being said, definitely, Dr. Gage, like, you know, do you have like a professional social media? Because we definitely want to give you a shout out. So if we do have any parents, that not are only on the podcast, but that are listening, if they would like to tap in with you, how could they best reach you?
Yes, I have an Instagram. I will look it up and let you know in a second.
Yes, ma'am. And we
That's
are.
so
Oh,
important because there's so many
Kyla,
people
this is
that
Dr.
we
Forrester.
know.
so we
I
can go. Dr. Forrester and then Dr. Perez, just to make sure everything is. We hear everything that you guys are gonna you know, all the knowledge you guys are gonna bless us with.
I have a question for Dr. Gage. I know we're strapped for time, but my question is for single parents and families where the care is split, where the children go to the one one person is the sole provider and the children spend weekends or holidays with the other parent. How does she go about guiding those parents? um, in the sense that the kids do one thing when they come to my house and they do the other thing when they go to their father's house. It's always very problematic, not just for the children, but for the parents. How do you have any pearls for those parents?
Well, that is probably one of the biggest challenges when there is co-parenting going on. Now, I will say that when you have kind of amicable relationships and people are willing to work with each other, it's a lot easier to help guide them. Like we kind of make the same rules at your house and my house. We respect if mom doesn't do this at her house, you can't do it at my house. So you don't have that divide. And then also children who are very smart, who then kind of put parents against each other, and that can be kind of devastating because as a mom, sometimes the primary caretaker, you go to dad's house for a weekend or a holiday and you get all the fun, you can stay up as long as you want, you can eat what you want, and now mom becomes the bad guy because she doesn't allow you to do that, or vice versa. So for me, and this probably goes back to one of the other things that you talked about before, Kyler, about how to get parents to this place where they can get the help is when you have a village, right? You don't have to be together as a couple to find a way to get along for the sake of your children. And when you're able to get along with the other parent of your child, you're more likely to be able to engage their family members, their mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and other people who can support you in that. So that's one way back to your question you asked before, Kyler. But the relationship between mom and dad has to be decent enough for them to want the same things. I think in the end, we all do want for our children to be healthy and have proper boundaries and do safe activities. So I think trying to mend a relationship enough for you all to be able to set the same rules and guidelines, respect the same rules and guidelines at each other's homes, and also be able to talk about it when you do disagree on something, in a way that hopefully will end in compromise. We can compromise on this. But the biggest thing for me is not putting your children where you're having one parent against each other. Children should always get that message, whether in the same parent household or not, that mom and dad are going to be on the same page about these particular things.
And then, to
The only challenge there, Dr. Gage, is that in more than one situation, and I'm sure you can agree with me, and Dr. Perez can also, a lot of our families, don't the parents don't want to work together, and that's a big challenge, and the child is stuck in the middle, or the parent that's the sole provider is stuck in the middle. So that's the real challenge.
Yeah.
so
And in
to
this
to
case, again, I think it's about, speaking to them about putting aside their personal conflicts, um, and really putting the children's needs and what's important for the children first. And you're right, that conversation doesn't always work and go well, but that's really all that you can do. For most, when you say, hey, your child's mental health or physical health is at stake, um, sometimes parents don't know how much the things they do and the conflict between them and another parent impacts a child. They don't always know. And I hear things all the time like, well, I don't talk to their dad about them or bad about them, but they don't have to hear it from you. They may hear it because you told their aunt, and their aunt is talking about it in front of them and doesn't know they're really listening. Or maybe their dad knows, and they're hearing it from him. There's not It's not too hard to figure out if your mom doesn't like your dad or your dad doesn't like your mom, and that's very difficult for a child to have to navigate.
and then if I might also chime in, because that honestly perfectly describes what our setup was for me growing up. And the biggest thing always was, communication. Like Dr. Gage mentioned, there were baseline things that were, concrete, no room for compromise. My parents were huge on responsibility, discipline, and education. Like those three things, they were always on the same page. And I think with having those three things unequivocally aligned upon, it pushed aside a lot of the different fluff. Additionally, I also, admit that when we did kind of get under that arrangement, we were also older. I was like 11 or 12. My brother was like 10. So that also, again, does make it easier. But like with everything, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be even, in just everyday family dynamics, communication, effective communication. Definitely have to double down on effective communication. um Always tends to take care of itself, especially if people are trying to get to a common goal and are completely invested in a positive outcome versus, okay, I want more of this, or I want more of this, or I want less of this, and vice versa, and all the back and forth. If you're willing to compromise, communicate, and collaborate, the things tend to work themselves out. Now, will it be foolproof, and will there be bumps in the road? Absolutely. But as long as you're willing to put in the time and effort, and really accept and realize that at the end of the day, it's for the success of the children. That should always be at the forefront. I definitely think that, with that in mind, it tends to take care of itself. But so I think, yeah, we're crossing over the threshold. Would anyone like to add some closing remarks?
I would hope that we keep this discussion open, and every opportunity there is someone who might run for office, that we ask them, how do they plan to address this? Get ideas. We've got to have the advocacy for the policies that will keep our families healthy.
Amen to that. Anyone else? Well, okay then. Thank everyone for not only joining within this conversation, but um again, for all of our listeners that have been tuning in, thank you so much. We do this for you guys to continue to build our village. And again, we just want to see everyone do good. We want everyone to be successful, especially those that are dealing with a lot, that have a lot going on within their lives, whether it is raising children alone, the economic struggles individually you're trying to pursue or reach a goal. But for this sake, mental health, we never know the battles or the different struggles that each and every one of us has. So with that being said, we are opening our arms to each and every one that would love to be a part of the ENT family. And with that being said, we are signing off of again another amazing episode with Dr. Gage and our amazing parent podcast team. So thank you all. Have a blessed Sunday. And remember to give a hug, show love, and build up your community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.